Welcome to my new channel for the love of people. I'm so glad you're here and joining us today. Subscribe and tap the notification bell and let you see where we go on our journey together. I'd love to hear your comments and welcome to the south coast of England. Well, hello and welcome to St. Peter's Church. We're in the churchyard today and I'm Heidi and I'm with my good friend Mark. Hello Mark.
Hi Heidi, thanks for inviting me around for a chat.
I'm going to let you kind of have a bit of free rein here, Mark. So I'm going to hand you the microphone back right now. Tell us about yourself and your background, if you don't mind.
Okay, it's a bit dodgy giving me a free rein, but so...
We can edit.
We can edit. Cut me out completely. So, I'm Mark. I was born in 1985. I've just turned 40 this year, which didn't bother me one bit. Turning 30 was scary. 40 is never bothered me. I live in Fordingbridge, so just down the road, not too far away. I've lived there all of my life on and off, so that's been pretty fun. I went to school locally to one of the Church of England primary schools, then went to a secondary school in Fordingbridge. I'm quite badly dyslexic, so I hated education, hated school. So as soon as I left, I wanted to get a job. All I wanted to do was learn to drive, didn't want to do any other education. So in a heat of a discussion with my parents, we call them discussions, they're really arguments, but in a deep discussion, I decided to go and work for my parents' family business, which is, so we are funeral directors. And when I went, I decided I was never going to touch a deceased body, never going to see anyone that had died. So I went as a cleaner to start with, and then slowly worked my way up. So the receptionist retired, so I went to the office to become reception. And that was horrendous for 4 years. I hated it because, they didn't like having the boss's son there, even though I say to them, don't worry, I moan about the bosses more than you guys do, that's not a problem. And then slowly worked my way up and then became a funeral arranger, then became a funeral director. Then I did embalming, so I'm a trained embalmer now. Okay. So I do embalming as well as funeral directing. And then I ended up managing the business after Dad's manager retired. And then since December 2002, Dad decided to have a stroke, which was really helpful. And then I now manage the whole business. So I am now classed as a managing director, which is a bit scary.
Wow. Okay. Well, I don't know about anybody else listening or watching this, but when you think of funeral directors, in my mind you think, oh, that's obviously a very serious, very worthwhile job, but very sombre, very serious, and that's kind of personality, surely they have to be, more boring sort of thing. Now, it strikes me, Mark, as I already know, that you're not that. So obviously you're full of life and energy, so what do you like with your clients? I mean, okay, no, not your clients, no.
They are the families.
With the family, that's what I mean. Let's talk about the families first. How are you when you first go and see a family who need your help?
Well, I think from the very first time you take the first initial call, you obviously don't know what's going to be on the end of the telephone. So from a very young age, we were taught by Mum and Dad not to answer the phone after 5 o'clock when we were really little, because they used to have the out-of-hours telephone. So the calls would always come through to the house. Then, as we became teenagers, we knew kind of what to say. So whenever we answered the telephone, it would always be, "Good evening, I am Newman Limited," because you never know who's on the end of the telephone. And I always say it's from your first reaction with people. So, you have to be sympathetic, but you don't want to be over the top with them. Right. You don't want to be too sad, because they are going through the worst point of their life. So you have to be very matter of fact with them as well, as kind, because you need to capture the information straight away. Okay. And then I always say, when you first meet a family, you have no idea what you're walking into. So family dynamics, how they're coping, how the death has affected them. So I always start, whether they come into our offices to meet us to talk about it, or I go to their homes to talk about the funeral, I always start the conversation by saying, "Sorry, I'm late," or anything like that, because generally I'm never late really, but it breaks the ice. Or you say, "Oh, you talk about the weather." And in particular in someone's house, you find something you think, oh, that's a really nice clock or a nice photo. So you start off with that. And that's how you build your relationship, to how you know how you're then going to lead on to the conversation. I do always say, I'm very sorry that you're having to meet me. But I never dive too deep into the sadness of it to start with, because that's not what they want. They want to know that you are human and that you can have a conversation with them about anything. And generally we do, and that's how you build up a rapport with them, because I ask questions about the person that's passed away, so you know how to move forward. So that's kind of how I start with, and then obviously you have to go through the difficult questions. And I always say to a family, it's a bit awful because you do get a bit of a patter of how questions come out. You can't help it. It's just how you are. And I always say to them, look, I'm really sorry the next question does bring me onto the coffin, because that is the worst bit. I always think that. Everything else, they will have thought about, but generally coffins they won't have done. So, yeah, that's how I kind of start and lead off and build a relationship up with that family. And we are strong believers in our business. Mum and Dad have always taught this to all of our staff, because I've got 25 staff that work with me. And everybody that passes away is somebody's loved one. And they become a member of our family, because as a family we're very open and very loving and kind of giving in a way, I suppose, and everyone becomes a member of our family. So everyone is known by the late Mr. or Mrs. and their name, rather than just Jones, Smith or Bloggs. They're always known as somebody, because they're somebody's loved one. And I do say to the families when I meet them, I say, I think your loved one's going to be really annoyed with me by the end of this, because I talk to them all the time. So every time I arrive in the morning, I say, morning everybody. This is to the deceased person, who can't answer me back, hopefully. And then as I'm leaving at night, I say, right, night everybody. Make sure you're back where you should be if you're going to have a party, especially over the weekends. And there's always a light on. I say to family that they're never in the dark. There's always lights on, so that their loved one is never in the dark.
That is detail, isn't it? I mean, can't imagine losing somebody that close, because I haven't lost anybody that close apart from my grandparents, but the thought of the funeral director, someone as yourself, going to that much trouble, and obviously you're comfortable with this to do that, and I think that's very beautiful to hear that, actually, that you actually do care. You're not just putting it on, you actually really do care. So are there parts of your job, whatever it might be, that you don't like doing, or that you'd rather pass on to someone else?
So that's quite a good question. So when I first started in the business, obviously I never thought the deceased would be my bag, to be honest. I never wanted to deal with them. But that's the bit I think I love pretty much as the most. So I love helping people. I love meeting people. That's what my strengths are, I think. And conducting the funeral, because I now am a funeral celebrant as well. So I take funeral services for non-believers or believers that don't necessarily feel that the minister or the church is going to get it right for them. So I step in and take funerals. So it's a great privilege to do that. And I do say it to families, it really is, for them to trust me to do it. Because no matter how much you don't know until the day whether you're going to hit the right mark for them. And it's really nice to be able to do that for families. So bits I don't really like doing, grave digging, I'm not going to lie, I'm not very good with a digger. So I've had to stop doing that. Can you imagine? I'm horrendous. The boys basically say, don't bother, Mark, it's quicker for us to do it by hand than you get on the digger. I have tried. So that's one of the parts of the job I generally don't do. But I kind of have learned everything. And I often think that sounds big-headed, but I started right at the bottom. And I worked my way up and did every job. And it's from Mum and Dad, really, especially Dad, who said, you shouldn't ask somebody to do something you're not willing to do yourself. So I say to I say to my team, I'm not going to ask you to do something I'm not prepared to go and do. And that's the honest truth. And I do everything. So I guess, no, there's parts of the job I always think, oh, do I have to do that? And that's generally when children and young people are involved, or babies. And we have a contract, I guess is the best way of describing it, with our local NHS in Salisbury. So we take care of all of their funerals where somebody's died within the hospital who hasn't got family, or nobody's coming forward, they can't afford a funeral. So we do it, at a reasonable price for the hospital. And we also have a contract where we deal with all babies and children. So when a baby passes away or a child, we will then, if the family want us to, if they want the hospital to kind of initiate that, we will then do it for them. But we also have a contract where if a baby or a child has to go for a post-mortem examination, they have to go back to Great Ormond Street in London. So we will then transport them to and from Great Ormond Street. Yeah, so that is the hardest part of the job, I'd say. But I always say when you're dealing with anybody, you know, no matter how old the person is that died, you have to treat them like a normal person. So even when it's a baby or a child, you have to still talk to them as if they were normal. You know, you don't put anything extra on, if I'm being honest. Yeah. And quite regularly, I mean, I don't know how it hasn't really got me in trouble, but I do say to people, this is shit, isn't it, really? And you have to, because you have to be honest with them, and you have to, and I feel that I'm saying to them, this is crap, but I'm here to help you, and we're going to get through it all together. And we do. And I always say to them, look, if you need to shout or cry at anyone, that's what I'm here for.
Again, it's that human side, isn't it, really, I think, and I suppose no matter what sort of walk of life you've come from, when it comes to the end, we're all going that way, if you like, you know. That's amazing, okay, and especially with the children and the babies, and obviously, you know, that compassion that you have there. That's really, really good to know. But I think you're right also when you say things, when you agree that things can be shit, you know, I think you're right, you're immediately kind of like, you know, trying to empathise as much as you can, sort of thing.
Because we're human as well. So I think we are human. We're not a robot.
And you're giving the family permission to be real with you as well. Yeah. Because it's a big trust thing, isn't it, that they're giving to you.
Massive trust.
Okay. Right. I can give the mic back to you now. Do you think you'll do this forever?
So at 16 when I joined the business, I didn't think I'd be here now. But it's always been my choice to be in the business. I've never been asked to be in it. I've never been forced by mum or dad. My sister isn't in the business. She's not involved. She's a teacher. Completely different. But yeah, I found it's cliche to say it's a calling, but it really is. It is a calling. It's a bit like being a nurse or a doctor. I think you're called into that field. And a minister in a way. You are called to become a minister, I think. And it definitely is a calling for us. For me, particularly. So yeah, I do think I probably will do it forever. And I've always said to mum and dad, you know, it used to be a standard joke, once they're dead and gone, we can do what we want with the business. You know, we can flog it, we can keep it going. But it's true, I often say that to them, I often say, God. Like when dad had his stroke, I was like to mum, well, if he's dead, he's dead. You know, we'll just flog the business and go and live on the money it gives us. But, you know, that's the kind of humour we have as a family. We are very humorous. Humorous, if that's even a word, but yeah, you do have to have that light. So yeah, I think I will.
Well, that's good to know because we can book in now. No. So on a kind of different note, how does Mark Newman unwind?
Oh, okay. So at work we are very traditional. We are a traditional funeral director, whereas we walk out in front of the hearse and we wear top hats and we have a cane and we walk the hearse away from either our premises or people's homes. And when we arrive at a crematorium or a burial ground or a church or the venue they're having it, because funerals happen all over the place, we do walk up to the venue. And we are very traditional. We wear all black. Our shoes are always spotless. Our hair's always got to look good because it's impressions. And our funeral fleet has to be clean. So we are very traditional. Out the back, as I say, the running part of the business is very modern, and it has to be. You have to keep up with trends, computer systems, you know, accounting software, embalming processes. It all has to be modern. So how do I unwind? Well, obviously I go to work and I wear a suit every day. My suit varies. I don't always wear a tie. If I'm on a funeral, I do. But if I'm in the office, I will wear like a black shirt done up or a white shirt, or, you know, I still go what I would call corporate smart, but also with a bit of a modern twist on it, I guess. So the families know that we're approachable, because you don't want to all be stuffed up. You know, people expect a funeral director to all be in black and with a tie, and that's how Dad started, you know, because back in the 70s when we started the business, 80s, 70s, it was very traditional like that, all the way through. So how do I unwind? Well, I always say to the staff, we have a big roller door on our garage thing. I say once the roller door comes down, that's how we all let off steam. So that's when the humour will start and we'll have a laugh, because you have to, because you're dealing with people's emotions all the time. Myself personally, I belong to an amateur dramatics group. I find that a great release. I belong to a couple of choirs, so I quite like to sing, even though I'm probably not very good at it. It helps unwind. I do say we probably become alcoholics in the funeral industry, because on a Friday night or a Saturday, if you're not working, you generally have a drink and go out with friends and release it. And you have to release that as well. I quite like my fashion. So I like to dress up every now and then. Sounds awful to say that, but I do. So that's kind of how I unwind, and I've got a good group of friends, and I've got a very core group of friends in Brighton.
Okay.
And so I go up there quite a bit, and that's where I can really let myself be me, and just be fun and have a laugh.
Mark is always fun. I'm just going to add that in here. Okay, right, okay. So I'm going to bring it into land, as they say. Yeah. But that's an awful saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Yeah. So, I've got a big question coming for you, Mark. What would you like your legacy to be when you're gone?
Oh, okay, that's a bit of a tough one. But I think my legacy, I'd like to be known as a kind and caring person, definitely. Someone that loves all people. I try not to judge. It's very difficult, but I try not to judge anybody. Treat everybody fairly, and also known as a good local funeral director, because I think that's really important, to have served my community in many ways. But I guess I'd like to just be known as a kind, caring, loving person who always puts other people first. And I don't say that very often, but I do. Everybody else comes before my needs, and that's how I think I'd like to be remembered. As a fun person, I guess, but caring and loving.
Yeah. Well, definitely all those things.
Very annoying at times, but there we go. I think that's how my legacy should be remembered, hopefully, if I make it.
Yeah, no. Well, all I can say is thank you so much, Mark, for sharing this time with us. Now we're going to go for a drink. But yes, Mark is a great friend, but I just knew you'd be perfect for this channel because, as you said, you love people, I love people, and that's important in life, I think. It's again, if everyone loved people, the world currently, especially right now, would be a better place. But but thank you so much for coming down all this way down to see us. And we're going to go and annoy the vicar now for a bit, I think, shall we? And thank you for joining us, and thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Okay, see you soon.